Well, I can't believe this is actually a first official video that I'm doing it here, because usually I sneak it in on the first episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month, which I have the last couple seasons here. But with the way things are going right now, I figure let's just make an official video on recapping what the Calgary Stampeders did at the 2020 CFL Canadian College Draft here, as the Calgary Stampeders coming in to this draft here had the first overall pick here. However, what did they do with that first overall pick? They actually wound up trading that pick here, as the Calgary Stampeders did have the first overall pick when they made that trade with the Ottawa RedBlacks in the Nick Arbuckle trade here. However, there was one player that ultimately it was Jordan Williams that went first overall, and he hasn't played football since 2017 here, but the Calgary Stampeders didn't seem as high in him, so they looked at trading down to pick up a player that they thought they would have that would still be on the board here and move up in the second round here, because the Calgary Stampeders did wind up trading the first overall pick and their 15th overall pick to the BC Lions here, and the Calgary Stampeders picked up the 3rd and 12th overall pick in this draft I'm recapping here. So before I continue on here, let's talk about the players that the Calgary Stampeders did actually draft here. So after that trade before the draft here, the Calgary Stampeders moved from number 1 to number 3 here. So now with the 3rd overall pick in the first round here that the Calgary Stampeders swapped with the BC Lions here, they drafted defensive end Adeyemi-Berglund, who was based out of southeastern Louisiana here. He's a defensive end that's 6'2" and weighs 250 pounds here. So that was the first pick that the Calgary Stampeders made the draft here. And then, since they moved up from 15 to 12 in the second round here, the Calgary Stampeders picked up a wide receiver here. Maybe you can joke it's a car here, as we drafted Travel Pinto. He played at the UBC here. He's a wide receiver, 5'11", 190 pounds here. So the Calgary Stampeders, those were the picks that they used in the swap with the BC Lions here. And what I'd like to do with my draft recaps here, as I started this template with the when I recap the NHL Entry Draft here, is we'll take a look at the picks that the Calgary Stampeders traded away and what they were used on. So, for example, 1st and 15 here, we'll look at what the BC Lions used in the pick that we traded when we drafted Adeyemi-Berglund and Travel Pinto here. And then there was a Dino that was drafted too, so there was a local player that also got drafted in this player draft here as well. So to continue on with the Calgary Stampeders here, the Calgary Stampeders had 2 picks in the 3rd round here. Going back to the Nick Arbuckle trade here, the Calgary Stampeders at least had the first pick in the 3rd round from the Ottawa RedBlacks here. The condition was that the first overall pick would have went if Nick Arbuckle signed with the Ottawa RedBlacks, which he did. So that's why the Calgary Stampeders had the first overall pick before they made that swap here. So in the 3rd round, 21st overall here, the Calgary Stampeders drafted yet another wide receiver here. And I believe he signed actually undrafted free agent with the New York Giants here, but they drafted another wide receiver here, and Royce and John here. He played at Simon Fraser University here. He's a 6'7", 220-pound receiver here, so definitely got a tall, stocky receiver here. As if you recall, the Calgary Stampeders definitely have lost a few receivers here. I know Adeyemi-Berglund was the big guy last year, was 3rd in the league. He signed with the Green Bay Packers here, and then we lost Jawan Breskison in free agency to the Toronto Argonauts here. So we were looking at picking up some receivers to recoup the depth here. So that was the 21st overall pick. And then 26, which was Calgary's own here, we drafted an offensive lineman named Jonathan Samara from St. Francis Xavier here. Defensive line, 6'2", 275-pounder here. We definitely always could use Canadian depth on the offensive line here. as the Calgary Stampeders definitely had some injuries to deal with, and the fact that who knows if Derek Dennis is going to come back here. We didn't sign him. He hasn't signed anywhere in the CFL as I know here, but he did actually play in the XFL, which now that league actually folded because of what's been going on here. And I sometimes think that the spring football leagues don't do as well just because people are footballed out in the South here, but that's just my take. So that was the round pick here. So now we get into the fourth round here. The Calgary Stampeders had 2 picks in the fourth round here. 31st overall, actually the Calgary Stampeders had this pick from the BC Lions here, as last season the Calgary Stampeders traded Justin Renfro to the BC Lions here, as we did have some depth here on the offensive line that was capable of playing. So we picked up a fourth round pick from the BC Lions here, and the Calgary Stampeders used that on Curtis Gray, who played at Waterloo here. He's a linebacker, 6'3", 200-pounder here. And then on the 34th overall, this is Calgary's own pick in the fourth round here. Calgary Stampeders picked up yet another wide receiver in Tyson Middlemost, 6'1", 180-pounder, and he played at McMaster here. And then the fifth round, the Calgary Stampeders did not have a pick at all. I believe Calgary traded away Justin Renfro and a fifth round pick in that Justin Renfro trade. I'll take a look at why Calgary didn't have that pick there. So they had no pick in the fifth round here. And then the sixth round, it was their own pick, 52nd overall here. Calgary Stampeders drafted Andrew Seinet-Spaulding, who's a defensive lineman, 6 foot, 285-pounder from McGill here. That's their own. And then in the seventh round here, 61st overall, the Calgary Stampeders drafted actually a kicker from Berman Burnham. He also is from St. Francis Xavier, so we drafted 2 players from that school. He's a kicker, 6 foot, 285-pounder here. I know the Calgary Stampeders still have Rene Paredes here, but we lost Rob Maber to retirement here in the offseason. But the Calgary Stampeders did sign Ronnie Piper to be a punter who was available to play with the Toronto Argonauts last season here. But maybe there'll be some competition in camp here whenever it gets going here. And then the last pick that the Calgary Stampeders made in the 8th round here, 70th overall, is Michael Asubio, is a quarterback, 5'11" here, 190 pounds here from Concordia here. And, we definitely lost Trey Roberson as he signed with the Chicago Bears here. So we definitely, I think, looking at the haul here, we definitely have done well. We picked up players that we are looking to replenish and build up the depth here. And, I think that's exactly what was the strategy that the Calgary Stampeders did here. So now this is the part where I'll take a look at the picks that were in play here that the Calgary Stampeders traded away here. So as the first overall pick that the Calgary Stampeders had, that they traded with the BC Lions here. The BC Lions now used that first overall pick for Jordan Williams here. He was from East Carolina, linebacker here. So that was the first overall pick that we had that we traded to BC that we originally got from Ottawa here. And then the 15th pick here, or we had the 15th pick that we had our own, but we traded the BC Lions in that pick there. Actually, the BC Lions drafted quarterback Nathan Rook, who played at Ohio here. So he was actually one of the higher rated quarterbacks that were available in this draft here. So that's who the Calgary Stampeders, those picks that they originally had, that's the BC Lions drafted here. So now looking at the pick that the BC Lions had from Calgary, that was from the Justin Renfro trade, that the 5th round pick that Calgary didn't have a pick in the 5th round here. The 43rd overall pick that the BC Lions used when they picked up Justin Renfro was Cordell Hastings from Acadia here as a wide receiver. So that's the picks that the Calgary Stampeders had in play here. So and then the last part here, before I'll go more in depth on the players that we drafted here, to highlight on the Stampeders website here, that the one Dino that got drafted, the Vanier Cup champion, University Dinos, may I add here, that the first pick of the 5th round here, 30th overall here, the Ottawa RedBlacks drafted Terrence Abrahams-Webster here as defensive back here, who played here in Calgary this past season. So there's a Dino that's going to Ottawa here, and I know I read that it was after the draft here that the Montreal Alouettes actually signed quarterback Adam Singera to a contract to take a look at him on the training camp here. So in some way we had two Dinos that got picked here, but only one Dino officially got picked in the draft here. So to go more depth on the players that the Calgary Stampeders drafted here on the Stampeders website. So obviously the first pick from the third overall here, the Isaac Adeyemi-Berglund here, defensive lineman, Southern Louisiana here. He played 33 games over 3 seasons, 2017-19 at Southern Louisiana here. He is from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia here. He had 135 tackles, 28 tackles for losses, 15 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery here, so he's definitely a pass rusher here. He was a second-team All-Conference at Senior 2019 prior to joining the Lions, the team that he played on in college here. He played 1 season at Champlain Regional College in Lennoxville, Quebec here. So definitely sounds like someone who can put pressure on the quarterbacks here. So then the second player that we drafted, Tervel Pinto here, who's from the UBC here. He's actually from Toronto, so Johan Breskison was also from Toronto here, just by the way. He had 234 receptions for 3,324 yards, 30 touchdowns in 41 games over 4 seasons at the UBC here. And he also spent some time as returner and defensive back, adding 1 kickoff return for a touchdown and 1 interception for a score here. And then last season with the UBC Thunderbirds here, he made 75 catches for 1,040 yards here with 7 touchdowns. And then also add the way here that he was on the 2015 UBC Thunderbirds. Actually was coached by Blake Neal, who actually spent some time with the University of Calgary Dinos, where actually I think he was a big reason why the team has more success again and more respect in the program here. They won the Vanier Cup in 2015 here, and I actually did remember watching parts of that game when I was in Winnipeg for the Grey Cup that year. So that he got some championship pedigree on this draft here. And then Rice and John here, the third round pick, 21st overall here. He's from Simon Fraser here. He led the NCAA Division II Great Northwest Athletic Conference in receptions with 53, receiving yards at 861, and touchdowns in 10 games here. As a senior in 2019, in his 4-year career with the Clan, John played 34 games, registering 132 catches, 1,098 yards, 20 touchdowns, as he was SFU's MVP Offensive Player of the Year in 2019. And yes, it did say here that he signed as an undrafted free agent with the New York Giants following the NFL draft here. So we definitely took in a gamble, and that's that pick that we got from the Ottawa RedBlacks here. So sometimes you might take that gamble, and he's on a player that you picked up in a trade here, and hopefully maybe he's available here. And I'm intrigued by the fact that he has a 6'7" frame too. So definitely helps if you're a receiver there. So then the next player that Calgary drafted to get more depth here, John Samara, who was 26 overall, offensive lineman for St. Francis Xavier here. He played 4 seasons there, 2016 to 19 here. He played in 31 games, either center or guard here, so he's definitely very versatile here, where you can either be a center or one of the guards. He was a product from Toronto and was named Atlantic University Sport All-Star and was a member of the X-Men's Conference Championship squad in 2019. Before being selected to the U Sports East-West Bowl, Samara studied business while at St. Francis there. So definitely got a book-smart offensive lineman here. So then Curtis Gray, the 4th rounder in 31st overall here, is a linebacker here. He played 32 games at Waterloo from 2016 to 19 here, that's where he's from, Waterloo, Ontario here. The linebacker recorded 164 solo tackles, including 11.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble, and 3 fumble recoveries and 10 pass breakups here. In 2019 here, he led the U Sports with 3 forced fumbles and was named U Sports first All-Star on special teams, and he also played in the East-West Bowl, which is the All-Star game in University Ball in Canada here. And then the next player here, Tyson Milnos, the 34th overall pick receiver that we got from Master here. He made 83 receptions for 1,032 yards and 7 touchdowns while at McMaster here. He's from Dundas, Ontario here. He played 26 games in 4 seasons from 2016 to 19 here, and it says male most registered a career high 119 yards, including a 70-yard reception in a game on September 21st, 2019 against Windsor there. In 2019, the economics major recorded 32 receptions for 528 yards and 4 majors at their Marauders win at the H Cup there. So he definitely had some big games there. And then the guy that we drafted in the 6th round, Andrew Seinet-Spaulding, defensive lineman, 52nd overall here. He was a recipient of the J.P. Metris Trophy at the U Sports Most Outstanding Lineman here on the defensive side. He was a unanimous of the RSEQ All-Star selection. He led the Quebec Conference in sacks at 7, tackles for a loss at 13.5 last season. He also added 27.5 total tackles here. Seinet-Spaulding was named the RSEQ Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2016 and an RSEQ All-Star both 2017 and 18 before being honored at the U Sports first All-Canadian 2019 here, and he studied social work at McGill there. And then the 7th round pick, Berman Burnham, the 7th round pick, 61st overall, the kicker from St. Francis here. He suited up for 32 games over 4 seasons from 2016 to 19 here with the X-Men. Originally, he is from Cambridge, Ontario. Burnham was an AUS All-Star punter in 2019, where he punted 52 yard times for an average of 42.8 yards here. So he's definitely versatile that can kick and punt as well. His longest punt went 64 yards, and he had 14 punts inside the opposition's 20-yard line. That's definitely something that Rob Maver was great at here. He also made 29 of 37 field goal attempts, an success rate of 78% here, which I think we'll still have Rene Paredes for that, but this is based on his college numbers here. Burnham has also been successful in all 27 of his punt after converts here, attempts for 114 career points scored there. So that was the kicker that we drafted here. And then the last pick, that last player that we selected, Michael Asubio, defensive back from Concordia here. He played all 4 seasons at the Stingers here from 2016 to 19 here. He tackled 51 tackles, 5 interceptions, 11 pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble in 2019. Asubio played 7 games and made 15 total tackles and 3 pass breakups here. Asubio is also a history major hailing from LaSalle, Quebec prior to Rolling Concordia. He played at CEGEP John Abbott College, where current kicker Rene Paredes actually once attended there. So some connections there as well here. So those are the players that the Calgary Stampeders drafted here, the 2020 Canadian College Draft here. Now we don't know when we'll see those said players in action this season. We're all here with the uncertainty going on here, but usually I just throw the draft in after I do my first season or first episode of my Calgary Stampeders this month, because the draft and training camp and preseason starts pretty quickly here, but now we got a little more time here, and the draft still happened as scheduled, and it was always done in an office where, for example, general manager John Huffnagel's in the Stamps office making those selections here. It's not like they all gathered in some kind of arena or conference center here. And I know the NFL definitely this past season in their past draft here did it also remotely as well, given what's been going on here. But what do you think of all the picks that the Calgary Stampeders made in the Canadian College Draft here? You never know how some of these players turn out here. I mean, last season, Calgary picked Hergy Maala, and some say that was a steal in the draft here, and definitely turned out very well for the Calgary Stampeders this past season here, but you just never know where some players get selected and how much of an impact they make going forward here, or never know if any players could get traded or signed elsewhere and break out too. So, this is definitely where a lot of our Canadian talent becomes available and get drafted to build our rosters here. And best of luck, and luck to the Calgary Stampeders, to all the players that were drafted this past season, and hopefully sooner rather than later, I'll get to see you in action and make an impact for the Calgary Stampeders going forward here. So if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home to Flames, Hip, and Roughnecks and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also talk Calgary sports on my channel here, but I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road on holidays or at a sporting event here. So if that sounds like you'd be interested to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, you know what you need to do. Just make sure you subscribe, and I also have my other social media links down in the description below there for other ways you can follow along here. So if I say here, go Stamps go, and I'll see you in the next video here.